Get that fucking trash out of your life. You have legacies to build. We grew that business from 3.4 million to 17.1. Horsepower, not horse shit. You want to be the parent that's an ally. They don't need another fucking friend. Not everybody's cup of whiskey. Toughest advice for the toughest businessmen. Be relentless. I don't have heroes. My mom and my dad are my heroes. I grew up the first 5 years of my life, 0 to 5, in the back of my mom and dad's village general store. We lived in the back, my mom raising myself and my sister, and my dad working in the front of the store, the front of the house, which was a general store. He sold everything: milk, Pepsi, chips, meats, fishing licenses. He would sell products to the farmers when they would come in, gasoline, you name it. Working 14-hour days. My dad would get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and he'd have a shower and get dressed and a quick bite to eat with us at the breakfast table. And then he would walk about 50 feet out from his kitchen into the general store where he would spend the next 14 hours straight. Didn't have employees, didn't have any assistants, no vacations, no handouts, no help, nothing. Just a man on a mission to better his life for his family. So I had the privilege of watching my dad work for 14 hours a day for 5 days a week or 7 days a week, every day but Christmas Day. And also watching my mom raise 2 children in the back without ever, either one of them, without any excuses. I never heard a complaint. I never heard any whining. We never heard any crying. We didn't have any money. We didn't have anything special. We were as blue collar as you could get. But thanks to my mom and dad, we had love in our house. My dad would close up at 9 p.m. and he'd come in and he'd be so tired he'd fall asleep in the chair and we'd already be in bed. My mom had already read to my sister and I, and we were long in bed, so we'd only really get to see my dad at breakfast or if we went out in the store to see him, which we did a lot. It was a real treat to go out and see my dad working behind the counter or slicing meat or, pumping gas, all that stuff. So my mom and dad are my heroes, not Michael Jordan, not Winston Churchill, not Elon Musk, not Ronald Reagan. People can be role models, but those people don't hold a candle to my mom and dad, who taught me that work is the reward. I wanted to share a Father's Day story to honor my dad, who's 89. He'll be 90 years young. My dad, Frank McLean, will be 90 years young on September the 5th. So just a few months away, God willing. And one of the most incredible stories that I can remember from age 5, and it's just stuck in my mind. It's something that'll never leave me. It's a story that taught me what kindness, what compassion, what empathy, and what generosity really looks like. It's not some quote on the wall or some passage or something some tomato can celebrity says. I saw it at those developmental ages of 0 to 5. I used to go in the store and I would see my dad, and one time especially I remember him talking to a gentleman who was a painter. He was a painter, down on his luck guy. He was married. He had 7 children. His name was actually Lauren North. And he used to come in the store all the time and he would get his loaf of bread and his drinks and his whatever he needed to feed his family. And one day I was 5 years old and I was in the store And I overheard my dad talking to Mr. North at the cash. My dad just had a big manual cash register, and then a big counter where people would put their groceries. And he was talking to Mr. North, and he said, maybe you could paint a couple rooms in our house. Or maybe you could seal the roof. The silver roof needs some sealing on the store. And Mr. North said, oh, that'd be great, Frank. That'd be great. I'd appreciate the work. And it just sounded strange to me, because I went up to my dad after, when Mr. North left the store, and I was like, Daddy, we don't need the house painted. We don't need rooms painted. Mommy didn't ask for that kind of stuff. Like, we don't need the roof fixed. There's probably nothing wrong with our roof. And I wondered why he was talking to Mr. North about hiring him. And my dad sat down with me over by the ice freezer, and I can remember it to this day. And he said, the reason I'm hiring Mr. North is because I want him to understand that we need him as well. That we need him as well. He says Mr. North comes in the store each week, and he buys some groceries for his family. He's a painter's son. He doesn't make much money at all. He has 7 children and his wife to provide for, and he doesn't make much money. He's very poor. And he goes, I want to ask him to do things for us that don't cost him any money or very little money. He said, and also things that don't place any more burden on him. He's got enough burden in his life. And he says, when Mr. North comes in, sometimes he'll put gas in the truck, and he'll buy some bologna and some bread. He says that's to feed his family for the week. His kids go to school every day, and they probably have a lunch kit full of bologna sandwiches 5 days a week. He says he buys pasta, whatever he can, to feed his family, and he works hard. He said, when I ask him to help me, he said it makes him feel better. It makes him feel that he's not in any way, shape, or form indebted to me. And I said, why would he feel that he's indebted or in debt to you? And he said, because many times, not all the time, but sometimes, when he comes in, he doesn't have any money to pay for his groceries until he's paid by the next job. And he said, he'll say to me, mark it down. And those words ring in my ears to this day, mark it down. And my dad had this board behind the cash where he had about 5 or 6 people that really struggled week to week to feed themselves, to exist. And my dad would mark things down for them. It could be a gallon of milk. It could be a box of cereal. It could be, some sliced meats, whatever it was. They would say, Frank, mark it down. And these are honorable people back in the day. This is in the 70s, where they would come in the next week, hell or high water, and pay off that debt, or at least put some money on it. Nobody wanted to owe anybody else. So when I saw my dad working with Mr. North like this, I came home one day, and here he is painting the outside of the store, and we didn't need the outside to be painted. And then one other time he was spraying, he was putting a rubber spray on the roof. And I can remember that stuff, even though it was so long ago. And my dad's saying, I'm never going to get that money. He can't ever pay that money back. But instead of him being embarrassed or feeling indebted, he said, I ask him for some favors, and he asks me for some favors. He says it makes us feel like we need each other. And he says that way he can come in the store anytime he wants, and he can ask me for help when he needs it. I don't want to ever get to the point where he drives by because he doesn't feel that I can help him. This is when our family, we had no money. My dad was running a tiny store with tight margins. My dad was probably taking out maybe a couple of $100 a week, maybe. We weren't in a position to be helping anybody. We weren't in a position to be marking it down. We weren't in a position to be carrying somebody else's debt. But my dad, coming from almost nothing, has such a soft spot for honorable, hardworking people. I'm not talking about people that are dishonorable or lazy. We're talking about people that work hard and had big families and tough times. And my dad just has a soft spot for people that are maybe down and just need a hand up, not a handout. And just seeing how he treated those people, those handful of people, when he owned the general store, who sometimes they'd come in and put $2 of gas in their car, they'd get some food for the week, and then they wouldn't be able to pay my dad. And my dad would say, that's okay, we'll work something out and pay me when you can. And he was in no position to do that. And you know, he had to worry about feeding his own family in a tiny store. And that just showed me what compassion and empathy and kindness and generosity really looks like. And my dad has a saying that sums up all of this. He said, we have an obligation to help people when they need help, not when we just feel like helping them. And I think that, you know, my dad never knew when these people were going to walk through the store, but when they needed help, he was there. And we were having lunch the other day, and my dad was talking about the different customers that would come in, and, you know, they'd put $5 down on their debt, and then the next week they'd put another $5. And he was literally helping feed some of these families. And he turned to me the other day and he said, he goes, the greatest gift you can give a fellow human being is their dignity. He says in these cases in the 1970s, he says these were people working 50, 60, 70 hours a week, painting, shoveling snow, cutting grass. It wasn't work ethic. It wasn't, you know, they weren't working. He says these were hardworking people that for whatever reason, and some of it is self-inflicted, he said they needed somebody to give them a little dignity and respect. And that's one thing I have noticed with my dad, no matter who he's talking to or who he's dealing with or how difficult the circumstances were in business. I can quite honestly say I have never in my lifetime ever seen my dad disrespect another person. I'm not that man. I'm not that great. I'm not that strong. I'm not that principled. But I can honestly believe that if you ask those people, they'd say, well, Frank gave me my dignity. Frank gave me respect when nobody else would. And it was $5 here, $2 there, cut the grass. I remember I'd come home and there'd be a stranger. I'd get off the school bus and there'd be a stranger cutting our grass. My dad always cut his own grass. Or there'd be somebody up a ladder washing the windows on the outside of the store. My dad always washed his own windows. He's a worker. Or somebody painting, or somebody shoveling snow, or somebody sweeping the street. And I would just say to myself, there's my dad helping somebody out. There's my dad helping somebody out. He has a really big heart for children. My dad has a really big heart for children in those families that could be going hungry. He knows what that's like. He knows what that's like to have 5 or 6 brothers and sisters, and you know, you eat once a day. You eat once a day so that everybody can eat. And I know my dad is the type of man who, I know a lot of times he pushed his plate away so that his mom or his dad, who were hardworking people, his adopted parents, could eat that day. Sometimes there was lots of food. Sometimes there was no food. He knows what it's like to wear a winter coat that's not good enough for the winter, the cold Canadian winters. He knows what that's like. He knows what it's like to drop out of school to support yourself and your family, that education just isn't an option. He knows what it's like to make decisions at age 12 and 15 and 16 and 18 that you could really use, your mom or your dad helping you with, but it's just not there. He didn't become a victim. He didn't become a volunteer victim. He just said, you know what? I didn't win the lottery. No big deal. I'm going to use it as gas and fuel, and I'm going to do the opposite of everybody around me. I don't want this life for me or my family or my wife, and I'm going to change things. And he took responsibility for his life, and the rest is history. But man, oh man, I'm glad I grew up in the back of a general store seeing my mom and dad work like that. It makes me, they say work is the reward. That's what my mom and dad say. Work is the reward. If great money and wealth and abundance and freedom come with that, that's gravy. That's gravy, but work is the reward. Work is the reward. Being a badass, not a bootlicker, is the reward. You answer to nobody. You don't work for the man. You don't sell out on your dreams. You do it. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But at least you're no slave. At least you're no bootlicker. So, my dad's level of kindness and empathy for those people when nobody watching too. That's my grandfather always said. You are who you are when nobody's watching, son. You are who you are in the darkness of night when nobody's watching. When nobody's watching, that's what your true character is. And I think about that. Nobody was watching my dad. I was watching my dad show kindness and compassion and empathy for those people. Not a handout. Those weren't handouts. Those were hand-ups. I know you can't pay this, but maybe you could, paint the outside of the store. My dad didn't need the outside of the store painted. He didn't need his grass cut. He didn't need his snow shoveled. He was selling dignity. He was selling dignity. Happy Father's Day to you. Take some time this weekend to think about whether it's good or whether it's bad. What did you learn from your dad? Like my father says all the time, my mom says all the time, we can learn from everybody. We can learn from everybody if we're willing to listen to hear, listen to understand. We can learn what to do and we can learn what not to do, but we can learn from everybody. There's not a human being on this earth that you meet that we can't learn something from if your ears are open and your mouth is closed and you listen to understand. And you walk a mile in a person's shoes, listening to understand. 2 ears, 1 mouth. We can learn. Maybe you grew up in a family like my dad where you learned what not to do. That's a gift too. My dad said that's a gift. They put a roof over my head. My parents worked as hard as they could. They did the best they could, my dad says. I can't get a negative word out of them. Like, your parents didn't do this. You grew up in a tough family. He goes, no. They did the best they could. They took me in when nobody else wanted me. They put a roof over my head. They put clothes on my back. They put food in front of me. They gave me every opportunity I needed. The rest was up to me. Could use a lot more of that mindset and attitude in 2023. They gave me everything I needed. They gave me a roof over my head. They put clothes on my back and they fed me. The rest is up to me. That's badass accountability. That's badass personal responsibility. That's badass personal autonomy. They gave me everything they needed. They didn't have to be perfect. They taught me what to do and what not to do. And then I chose a different life. Compassion, empathy, kindness, and generosity that a 5-year-old I never forgot. Never forgot. Maybe that's why I'm on a mission to help 1 million men. Maybe that's why I'm on a mission to help other people and call those I've been called to serve. Maybe. More is caught than taught. I caught kindness. I caught empathy. I caught compassion. I caught generosity from watching my mom and dad. Not from them ever saying a word about it. From just watching how he treated Mr. North with respect and dignity. A broken down, should have been retired, tired, fatigued, and beat painter. And my dad treated him like he was the president of the United States, like he was the prime minister of Canada. Do you know how much that meant to that man? Living a life of quiet desperation with no hope. And my dad gives him that 60 seconds a day of respect and integrity. God bless all the fathers out there, and God bless you and your family. I'm thinking about you all the time. If you, I'm opening up the doors to my email millions for another 2 days, 1 day, whatever it is, emailmillions.coach. It is the honey that brings in the money. I didn't put together some fancy sales page. Email marketing is how I sold $150 million so far. And it's one of my two. I've made my money with email and physical mail. And I'm sharing my blueprint with men and women that want to do the same. It's a cup of coffee a day, $3.24. Emailmillions.coach. And I'm going to slam the door shut in another 24 hours. On this Father's Day, remember to do what we do. Make sure you hug your family, your wife, your kids, your best friend, Queen. Get on the phone and talk to your kids if they're not at home anymore. Make sure they hear your voice every day. If the king doesn't rise, the kingdom dies. And stop making excuses and start showing up and being mentally present. Today is in honor of you. Use it as a kickstart to take your fatherhood, your role as a husband, as a father, as a grandfather to an all new level. Use these days to raise the bar. Use these days to raise the bar. That's what I'm going to do. And just count your blessings for what you learned to do, and count your blessings for what you learned not to do. Those experiences are a gift. They are fuel. They are gasoline to do better, to do even better. 2 words that changed my life. 2 words that can change your life. Happy Father's Day. Be relentless.